They shall have stars at elbow and foot, by So Do Roses. Summary. Matthias Waller, unsure what else he can do, saves a fairy. Years later he comes to regret it. Or, Patton grows up with a burden no child should have to bear. The rating for this fic is general audiences. There are no relationship tags on this fic. Additional tags are harm to animals, sort of, harm to children, brief, mind control, homophobia, which is also brief. You know that shitty fairy godmother in Ella Enchanted? Well, she better be ready to be upstaged because Patton's fairy godmother is about to pull out the big guns. Patton-centric. Kind of a downer ending, but the series doesn't stay that way, I promise. "4 days before Christmas, Maddie's house ran out of firewood. His father, Jonathan Waller, decided Maddie, 11 and just old enough that the barest edges of puberty were starting to creep up on the lines of his face, was old enough to come with him to carry it from the woodshed to the garage. Maddie's mom, Elizabeth, who was maybe a smidge overprotective, forced him into his puffy red coat, snow pants, a hat, scarf, and gloves, even though the woodshed was only 2 minutes' walk from the house, and only that long because there were 2 feet of snow on the ground. In the daylight in the winter you could see it through the trees from the back porch. But it was dark and cold, and it made his mom happy, so he let her fuss, and then followed his father out the back door. As they stepped into the tree line, Maddie focusing on his father's footprints and the ground in front of him, he saw a flash out of the corner of his eye. He turned to look, and only saw a little speck of light a ways off, bobbing slightly like someone carrying a lantern. He shook his head, looking away from the will-o'-wisp, and turning back to his father's footprints in front of him. Except the footprints weren't there. He spun on his heel, but his house was out of sight too. He said a word he was sure his mother would have washed his mouth out with bleach for, let alone soap. But getting pixie-led just by looking at a will-o'-wisp? That was just unfair. He groaned, knowing his mom was never gonna so much as let him breathe in the direction of the woods again until he was 30, and started the uncomfortably cold process of turning his coat inside out. As he wrestled with the sleeves, he started looking around for anything useful. Of course he didn't put any iron in his pocket before leaving. He was walking like 200 feet. This was ridiculous. He heard a soft noise. He paused, heart picking up, and wondering if he was maybe being a little too flippant. But the noise, crying, sounded more afraid than it did frightening. He should just finish turning his coat and try to find his way back home, but the whimpering was so pitiful and sounded so close. He hesitated only a moment longer, and then shook his head in defeat and followed the sound. There was a tangle of brambles a dozen yards away, and as he drew closer he saw a mass of white fur inside. It didn't look like any kind of animal he'd seen, sort of beaver-like hind legs, and a dog face with wicked-looking teeth. It had blank white eyes, and even without irises or pupils he could tell it was watching him. Its back leg was caught in a steel trap, and Maddie could hear it sizzling slightly. He winced. It was probably a fox trap, and whoever set it, boy did he hope he still wasn't on his dad's property, was probably going to be in some neck-deep trouble if he set this thing loose. But it had seen him now, so he was going to be in neck-deep if he walked away. It whined again, and something clenched in Maddie's chest. Maybe, if he freed it, it would be happy enough that it wouldn't hurt anyone at all? He spoke softly, little nonsense words he used on the goats when they were antsy, and moved slowly as he reached forward and clicked the release on the trap. The white thing dashed forward, the image of it rippling like a wet photograph, and then it twisted and stretched and became a woman. He blinked and looked again. Not quite a woman. She was easily 7 feet tall, taller than any person Maddie had ever seen, with skin and hair the exact color of the snow around them, and those same blank white eyes. She had on clothes, he thought. They seemed to be made of clouds or mist, and he wondered if they were magic clothes or if that's just what her body looked like. She smiled, and her teeth hadn't changed at all, still sharp and canine. Maddie shivered. "I will remember your kindness," she said, her voice like rustling branches. And then, between one blink and the next, she was gone. "Matty!" Matty whirled on his heel with a yelp, and there was his father, with his eyebrow raised, and the woodshed right behind him. "Are you coming or not?" Yes," Matty stammered, running forward. As he carried his armful of wood back to the house, he wondered what the fairy woman meant. Was she going to find him later? Well, fairies had long lives and finicky priorities. Maybe she'd just never get around to doing anything about it. And if she did, well, there wasn't really anything he could do to stop her, was there? Stacking the logs in his arms into the wood cupboard, Matty decided to put it out of his mind. Years passed, and Matty grew up. He got good grades and went to a good college. When he came back to Wick Hills because his parents' health was failing, he told himself it was because he wanted to, and that had nothing to do with how nobody ever managed to leave the Wick Hills for very long. He met Shelley Stewart, who had been 2 years ahead of him and as quiet as a mouse in school, who was his secretary for the Wick Hills Community Tribune. He decided, even if it was just Wick Hills refusing to give him up, he didn't mind if it meant he got to fall in love with that sweet smile. They got married in the church he'd been raised in, and when his parents died 2 years later, he told himself he should just be grateful they got to see his wedding. He worked the farm and loved his wife and was grateful. By the time he and Shelley had their own son, Patton, golden curls and hazel eyes, all smiles and giggling joy, Matthias had forgotten all about the fairy woman from his childhood. But she certainly hadn't forgotten about him. "Mama, Papa, watch me!" shouted Patton. "We're watching, Patty," said Shelley, though she was fibbing a little. She could see Patton out of the corner of her eye, but she and Matt both were more focused on getting the clothes up on the clothesline. "Mama, I want to go roll." "You can roll down the hill in a minute, Patton. Just let me finish these clothes and I'll take you out front." "Mama, I want to go roll now." "I will take you to roll if you wish, little one." Shelley's heart leapt into her mouth, and she spun, dropping the sheet into the dirt. Beside her, Matt choked on the air. A woman, a fae, no, not Patty, not her boy, please. Towering and pale, stood over Patton. Patton turned around, startled. He looked back at his parents, and he must have seen the terror in their faces, because he took a step back. But he was only 4, and small besides, so he didn't get far before the fae plucked him off the ground. Said Patton, "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers." "But I am not a stranger," she said, smiling with mouth full of razor teeth. "I am your father's friend, and your fairy godmother." Shelley snapped her head to look at Matt, to demand what she was talking about, but Matt looked just as horrified as she did. "Oh, okay," said Patton quietly. The fae tilted her head. "You are now quiet, when before you were quite carefree. Are you afraid of me, little one?" "He's shy," Shelley blurted. Just shy. He's not used to... He doesn't meet new people very often." The fae hummed and nodded. Her thoughtful expression was almost human. But then she grinned, showing her teeth. "I have a gift for you then, little one." Patton perked up, and Shelley didn't know what to say. They couldn't refuse. It wasn't like they had a choice, but whatever it was could not possibly be good. "Since you are so shy, I shall give you a lovely and pleasing voice, so that everyone who hears it will be charmed." Patton smiled bigger, and then turned to his parents, delighted. "A present, Mama!" "That is very kind of you, ma'am," choked Shelley. "Oh, I suppose," she said, turning to look at them for the first time. "A sufficient gift for my friend, for his kindness, I hope?" Yes," Matt wheezed, the first words he'd spoken in the whole ordeal. "Yes, I appreciate it." Shelley wanted to ask what in the hell they were talking about, but she was afraid if she took her eyes off Patton for even a moment she'd never see him again. "Wonderful," she replied. She reached forward with the hand that was not holding up Patton and pressed it to his neck. When Patton screamed, Shelley sprinted forward, but by the time she reached him, the fae was gone, and Patton was lying on the ground. When she picked him up, the terror she felt had nothing to do with his cries, and everything to do with the pale white handprint spanning his entire throat. After a few weeks, when there were almost no changes but the mark, not raised like a scar or shiny like a burn. No sign that it should have hurt him at all, but of course it did. The good neighbors did nothing halfway. Matt slowly began to relax. Patton could sing now, when before he couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, more beautifully than any 4-year-old had any business doing. He'd chanted his own lullaby back to his mother and nearly reduced her to tears. But that seemed to be the only thing, and Matt wondered if they'd dodged a bullet and actually received just a gift, with no double edge and no catch, just a lovely voice for his son in payment for a kindness he'd nearly forgotten about anyway. They were in the kitchen, Shelley and him moving around each other with an ease born of years of practice, with Patton playing quietly with his dolls a few feet away. He'd been subdued since the incident, but he was slowly coming back to himself. "Mama?" he said. "Yes, dear?" said Shelley, pouring a bowl of onion Matt had just minced into the saucepan. "Gimme juice, please?" Matt would never forget what happened next for as long as he lived. Shelley instantly dropped the bowl, which bounced off the edge of the saucepan and onto the floor, shattering on the tile and scattering onion everywhere. She walked to the fridge mechanically, twitching almost like she was a marionette on strings. "Mama?" said Patton. She ignored him, opening the fridge. The apple juice was towards the back, and she started grabbing things in front of it and throwing them to the floor. "Mama, what are you doing?" said Patton, slightly hysterical. "Shelley," said Matt, trying to keep his voice level despite the fact that he was just as horrified as Patton clearly was. "Shelley, can you hear me?" The tubs of leftovers and half-empty jars just kept falling to the ground until Shelley's hand closed around the bottle of apple juice and she jerked around and started walking towards Patton. "Mama, stop!" Shelley collapsed instantly. "Shelley!" Matt skidded to his knees, flipping her over. Her eyes were closed and she was limp as a rag doll. She wasn't breathing. Matt was frozen, hands hovering uselessly. What was happening? "Papa, what's wrong with Mama?" She's just sleeping, Patty," he said, his voice coming from far away. He still couldn't get his hands to move. He needed to do CPR or something. Patton had come closer, tears running down his little round face, and he threw his arms around his mother's neck. "Mama, you're scaring me. Please wake up." Shelley's eyes shot open, and she gasped like she'd come out from underwater. She reached out and grabbed Patton, crushing him to her chest and sobbing. Matt looked at the mark on Patton's neck, wrapped his arms around his wife and son, and cried right along with her. It was Patton's first day of kindergarten, and he was so scared. "Mama, I don't want to," he cried. "Everything's gonna be fine, Patty," she said, and the smile was only a little strained. "You haven't made a mistake in months. You've been doing so good. Do you remember the rule?" Patton looked down the road in the direction the bus was supposed to come from, apprehensively. "Always ask, never tell," he recited. "Can you give me an example?" Patton thought for a moment. "If I need to go to the bathroom, I should say, 'May I go to the bathroom?'" "Very good. What if another child takes a toy from you?" "I should not get angry and go tell a teacher. I should just say what they did and not tell a teacher to do anything." "See, Patton, you can do it. I know you can." Patton considered, just for the tiniest moment, telling Mama to let him stay home. But then he shuddered, remembering the way his parents twitched and jerked whenever he accidentally told them what to do, and felt horrible for even thinking it. "Okay," he said. "I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart." Patton looked over her shoulder at the incoming bus and started fiddling with the cat charm dangling from the strap of his blue backpack. He climbed onto the bus and sat in the very first seat that was empty, scooting all the way to the window and pressing his face to the glass. Mama waved at him, and he forced a smile and waved back. As the bus pulled away, he took a deep breath and plastered the nicest, friendliest smile on his face he could manage. Scrunching down and whispering as quiet as he could so nobody could hear him, he told himself, "Be happy." Telling didn't work as well on himself as it did other people, but he did feel most of the worry fade to the back of his brain. Mama and Papa didn't know he told himself to do things. He didn't think they would like it, and sometimes it was the only way he could keep from crying. As everybody filed off the bus and toward the school building, Patton looked around for Miss Lisa, the kindergarten teacher who he'd met at the orientation. Then he saw her. She was wearing a pink blouse with a little pocket on the chest, and the pocket had a picture of a cat that looked like it was peeking out. She had other kids standing near her, and some of them were already talking to each other. Patton hurried up closer to join them, but then paused. What if he tried to talk to someone and told them something on accident? He looked back and forth between the other kids and Miss Lisa, then turned away from them to stand near her leg. "Good morning, Patton." "Good morning, ma'am," he replied. "Would you like to talk to the other kids?" "No, thank you, ma'am." She nodded, patting him on the shoulder. "All right, then. Maybe later." Maybe never, thought Patton sadly. The school day wasn't as bad as Patton thought it was going to be. They had story time and learned about letters and met the class pet, a guinea pig named Daisy. When Miss Lisa took them outside for recess for the last half hour before the buses came to get them, only a couple of people tried to play with him, but after several polite "no thank yous," the other kids left him alone on the swings. It wasn't so bad. He liked to swing anyway. He tensed up when another boy came closer. What was his name? Martin? Mitchell? But the other kid didn't come near him, just started climbing on a balance beam nearby. Patton let out a breath and continued to swing. He'd done it. He'd gotten through the whole day. He scratched at the neck of his collared shirt, buttoned up to hide the handprint at the base of his neck. He wanted to undo it, but he wasn't very good at doing buttons, and he didn't want to ask the teacher. Recess was probably almost over anyway, and then he could go home and ask Mama to do it. Another class got released for recess, older kids Patton didn't know. The first buses were starting to pull up, and Patton figured if he went to wait by the door now, it would be fine. "Hey, loser!" Patton jerked his head up, but the older kid didn't seem to be talking to him. He and another boy had gone up to the other kindergartner on the balance beam with a smear. "What's your name, Tiny?" The other boy hesitated before answering. "My name's Mickey Talbot. What's yours?" The older kid stuck his chin out. "I'm Chad." "So, Mickey, don't you know the balance beam is for girls and ballerinas? What do you think you're doing?" Mickey tilted his head, screwing his face up in concentration. "Well, I like dancing. Maybe I'll be a ballerina." The older kid laughed, but Patton didn't think he'd ever heard someone laugh quite like that. Mean and kind of slimy. "Hear that, Robbie? He says he's a ballerina." The other kid, Robbie, laughed in that same unpleasant way. Mickey seemed to be getting angry. "Well, what's wrong with ballerinas?" he said. "What do you mean, what's wrong with ballerinas? Are you gay or something?" said Robbie, shoving Mickey off the balance beam. "Hey!" exclaimed Mickey. "You're mean. Go away." "You're mean. Go away," Chad mocked back. Patton was running forward, and words were bubbling up in his throat before he could stop them. "Hey!" The older boys looked up, and Robbie raised his eyebrows. "What, Pipsqueak?" Patton's heart was hammering, and he thought very carefully about what he could say. He looked between them and Mickey on the ground. You're not being nice." Chad barked. "So what? What are you going to do about it?" Good question. What was Patton going to do about it? He couldn't let them hurt Mickey, but he couldn't tell them not to. That would be wrong. But would it be better to let them be mean? He looked out of the corner of his eye at the recess monitor, all the way on the other side of the playground. But while he was looking away, he didn't see Chad come closer until he closed his fist around Patton's collar. Patton panicked. "Let go of me!" Chad dropped him. Patton slapped his hands over his mouth, and Chad looked down at his own hands in astonishment. "What the—" "I'm sorry," Patton cried. Chad's expression turned from confusion to rage. "What did you just do to me?" "I didn't mean to." Chad lunged for him, and Patton tripped, falling on his back in his haste to scramble away. Chad grabbed for his collar again, and Patton heard a tearing noise. "What's on your neck, you freak?" Nothing! Is that a handprint? Don't touch me! Chad jerked back again like he'd been burned. He kept reaching forward, but his hands almost seemed to come up on a wall each time he got close, and his eyes would glaze over as he jerked out of the arm's reach. Come on, Chad, just leave them. The kid's got magic, said Robbie, pulling on Chad's arm and dragging him away. Chad gave Patton one last hateful look before following him. Patton took a deep, shaky breath, covering his mouth to keep any sobs from coming out. He climbed to his feet and turned to look at Mickey, opening his mouth to ask if he was okay. But Mickey looked so scared. Started Patton, taking a hesitant step forward. What was that? Mickey shouted, trembling. What kind of freaky magic is that? Said Patton, I've got a fairy godmother, and my voice is magic. But what did you do? Patton shuffled his feet hesitantly. His parents hadn't said it was supposed to be a secret, and maybe if Patton explained, Mickey would be less scared. If I tell people to do something, they do it. I don't do it on purpose, ever. It's just, sometimes I do it on accident. Oh, said Mickey. The bell rang, and both of them looked up to where everyone was moving toward the school doors. Thanks for getting them to leave me alone, I guess. Oh, said Patton, who had almost forgotten in the ensuing chaos that they'd been bothering Mickey to begin with. You're welcome. Mickey nodded, rushing past Patton and making his way to the entrance. Mickey? Yeah? Do you want to sit with me on the bus? Mickey looked back at him hesitantly. If I say no, will you make me do it anyway? Patton's stomach twisted. No, of course not. Mickey shifted his weight. Okay, then I don't really want to. Patton plastered a smile on his face, nodding quickly to hide the fact that his eyes were filling with tears. Okay then, I hope you have a nice day. Mickey relaxed, nodded once more, and ran the rest of the way to the school building. Patton kept nodding even after Mickey had turned away, biting the inside of his cheek to keep his lip from wobbling. Okay, he said miserably. He took a deep breath. Be happy, he whispered. And all the way from the playground to the classroom, onto the bus, and into Mama's open arms, the smile never left his face. And that's the end of They Shall Have Stars at Elbow and Foot. Hello, this is Kyra. You're listening to a dramatized podfic, which is a new type of podfic for me to make. If you'd prefer one without the music and sound effects, I have plain versions uploaded as well. In the description of this video will be links to the original fic, the author's Tumblr, the reader's Tumblr, and the audio editor's Tumblr. If you've enjoyed listening, like and subscribe. If you particularly enjoyed and want to give back to the creators, I'll link ways you can show support. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll enjoy the next podfic.